For years, the truth stayed hidden, the victims forgotten, the cases left cold, until science revealed what time could not. This is decades in the dark, where cold cases are brought back to light. Today we're on site, here on Ocracoke Island, North Carolina, a place of windswept dunes, shifting tides, and history steeped in legends of pirates and shipwrecks. To reach this village, you need a boat or a ferry. There are no highways out. Its isolation is part of its beauty, and part of its mystery. And here, among the quiet streets and the shadow of the Ocracoke lighthouse, one unsolved murder still lingers: the killing of Alice Wahab Williams. In the 1950s, Ocracoke's population was under 800 people, a village where everyone knew each other by name, where families had lived side by side for generations. Murder was virtually unheard of here, so rare that in modern times the island averages only one homicide every several years, which made what happened to Alice Wahab Williams not just a murder, but a shock that shook the entire island. Alice was born in 1865 into one of Ocracoke's oldest families, the Wahabs, a name long tied to the island's history. The Wahab family traced back to early settlers in the 1700s, and the name itself, likely of Arabic origin, had become synonymous on Ocracoke with land, lineage, and influence. To be a Wahab meant your roots stretched back for centuries, part of the very foundation of the island. Later, she married Captain David Williams, one of Ocracoke's most respected mariners. He worked as a pilot, the man responsible for guiding ships safely through the treacherous waters of Ocracoke Inlet. It was a job that demanded precision and courage, and he carried it out with skill. Beyond piloting, he helped establish the first organized ferry services linking Ocracoke to the outside world. His reputation for reliability earned him enduring respect, so much so that decades later, the Ocracoke ferry terminal itself was named in his honor. Together, Alice and David raised a large family in their two-story home near the water. By the 1950s, her children were grown and raising families of their own. Alice was the matriarch now, a grandmother surrounded by relatives, well-known and well-loved across the island. At 88 years old, she was still sharp and active, very much part of the community. But in 1953, her life ended violently. One night, Alice was attacked inside her own home. The next morning, when neighbors and family hadn't seen her as usual, they went to check in. On Ocracoke in the 1950s, that was what people did. In a village this small, you noticed if someone hadn't been out on their porch, tending their yard, or speaking with neighbors by midday. Doors were rarely locked, and the community looked after its own. When they stepped inside Alice's house, they made a grim discovery. She hadn't died of natural causes. She had been murdered. Word spread quickly across the island, and fear rippled through Ocracoke. If someone could kill Alice, no one was safe. Suspicion soon fell on an outsider. In those years, servicemen from the nearby bases at Hatteras and Portsmouth sometimes visited the island. Witnesses reported seeing a uniformed man near Alice's home around the time of her death. Some even claimed he was seen leaving with her, though whether that was fact or rumor has never been proven. Alice wasn't known to spend time with servicemen. At 88 years old, her life was centered around her family and home, which made the sighting even more suspicious. But despite rumors, no one was ever arrested. The serviceman was never identified. Her husband, Captain David Williams, was never officially considered a suspect. By 1953, he too was in his 80s, and his health was already in decline. It's unlikely he was still working at sea, which makes his absence on the night of the murder all the more curious. Where was he, if not by Alice's side? And why did no one ever seem to ask? Modern eyes might see things differently. In most murder cases, the spouse is the first suspect. Studies show that in 40 to 50% of domestic homicides, it's the husband or wife who is responsible. But in Alice's case, that line of inquiry was never pursued. There are no public records pointing to David as a suspect, but questions linger. Why was the investigation so thin, the details so scarce? Was it simply poor record-keeping in a small rural village? Or was it silence? A community unwilling to tarnish the name of one of their most respected men? And then there's the question of motive. Who benefited from Alice's death? The Wahab family, Alice's side, was one of the oldest and wealthiest on Ocracoke. If Alice still controlled property or inheritance, her death could have shifted that wealth to her husband. David himself was respected and skilled, but his money came through his work, not family holdings. If Alice had more, her death could have meant gain for him, financial or otherwise. But if David was responsible, he didn't enjoy the benefit for long. He died just 5 years later, in 1958, leaving behind the same house, the same family, and the same unanswered questions. Today, both Alice and David rest in the Ocracoke Community Cemetery, buried side by side among generations of Wahabs and Williams. Still, the mystery never left Ocracoke. Some insisted the serviceman theory was true. Others believed it had to be someone on the island, that a stranger couldn't have killed her without being noticed. But without hard evidence, all that remains are rumors. The Ocracoke Lighthouse had stood for more than a century, guiding sailors safely through shifting shoals and treacherous waters. But even with its steady beam watching over the village, it couldn't shine light on the darkness that came to Alice's door. When I came here, I expected to find answers. I spoke with the staff at the Ocracoke Preservation Society Museum, the very house where Alice lived and died. I even asked at a local bookstore just down the road, and both told me the same thing. They knew nothing about the murder. No files, no records, no story to share. That silence says something. In a village this small, history is usually remembered and repeated. Shipwrecks, hurricanes, even ghost stories live on. But Alice's death, it seems to have been erased. Whether by time, by shame, or by choice, her story has slipped into the shadows. Today, the house where Alice once lived still stands. It's the Ocracoke Preservation Society Museum, a white two-story building that welcomes visitors curious about island history. Tourists walk its halls, learning about shipwrecks and hurricanes, about pirates and fishermen, rarely realizing that it was once the site of Ocracoke's most enduring unsolved murder. And some say Alice never really left. Visitors and staff have reported strange sounds, doors moving on their own, and the uneasy sense of being watched. Even in my own visit, one of the pictures I took inside the house, a pale white orb appears. Something I never saw with my eyes, and something that isn't there in the other shots. Whether it was a trick of the light, or something else, it adds to the mystery that lingers in Alice's home. For an island defined by stories, from Blackbeard's beheading just offshore to the Carol A. Deering ghost ship, Alice Wahab Williams' murder stands apart. Because unlike legends, this was real. A life cut short, a family left with no answers, a community haunted by the idea that the truth may never be known. Even now, more than 70 years later, no one knows who killed Alice. No charges, no resolution. Just silence where the truth should be. This is Decades in the Dark, where science brings the past to light. Subscribe for more stories where justice never expires.